we have Josh Gippin to start things off. Who's right over here? There he is. There's more than that. There's an actual introduction. So Josh was born and raised in Akron, which also deserves a round of applause. He's an aspiring documentary filmmaker, although I would have said documentarian because it sounds so, highfalutin. But documentarian or documentary filmmaker is good either way. He's working currently on his 6th feature-length film. It's called Not the Chosen: Reconstructing Jewish Identity. Though he's loved all his films, this is the one he hopes will be competitive on the International Film Circuit, International Film Festival Circuit. And I, for one, we would travel, especially to Park City to see it. That would be my favorite. You let me know, we'll get some Southwest tickets. Coming full circle, Josh had left Akron, studied abroad in Ecuador and Chile, lived in Mexico for about 2 years, and then returned to Ecuador to do his master's project. He was doing all of this as a cultural anthropologist, cultural studies student, and then really hit on film, and that became the defining thread for his career. When he was there, his first film project became it was a film called The Raised Machete, and you say it like this, El Machete Alzado, which is a beautiful film helping discover the untold stories of farmers in the area, and you can look it up on Josh's website, joshuatreevideo.com. All of this traveling happened before Josh returned to his roots here in Akron. These roots run deep. Josh is a big family person. He comes from family. His family is joining him here tonight. Some more of his family is hopefully on the way and will come in Mach 6 with their hair on fire in a moment. But the root of Josh's story has to do with family as well. His Baba is his grandmother. That's Yiddish for grandmother. She was the person who taught him to tell stories, or taught him to love telling stories. And Josh and his Baba were just published in an NPR book that does the StoryCorps, on Wednesdays when you're just putting on your mascara in your car and then you hear the story and then you cry and you wreck it. That's the thing. Josh and his grandmother were on that, and they made it into the book. And so Josh is going to get a little meta on us tonight and tell the story about telling stories with StoryCorps here tonight. So please give your warm round of applause for Josh Gippin, who will head up on the stage.
Thanks, Heather. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm just going to take a second to get situated. So this is the subject of my talk today. This just was published last month. It's called Callings, The Purpose and Passion of Work, a StoryCorps book. And we're in this book, my Baba and me. And again, Baba is Yiddish for grandma, that's what we call her. So I'm going to tell the story of that one time downtown when StoryCorps mobile unit came and parked right in front of the Akron Library on Main Street. But before we get there, I'm going to take you further back. I'm going to take you all the way back to my childhood, growing up with Bubba. And, she wasn't the sweet little Bubby, oh, my darling little grandma. No, that was not Bubba. She was Bubba, okay? She was a barkeep in a very tough neighborhood here in Akron. She owned, in the height of her career, she owned the Zanzibar and the Rendezvous, and she knew how to handle the riffraff. She was not to be messed with. And she had, when I knew her, she was older. She had tough, leathery skin, and she had a raspy voice from smoking Chesterfield non-filters all those years. 50 years I've been smoking Chesterfield, no filters. And that's how she was. She was unfiltered, She told it like it was. She shot from the hip, And she was not afraid to tell you what she thought about you. If she was talking to you, she was going to tell you what she thought about you. And she loved to tell stories. And she would gather all us grandkids around. At the time there were 6 of us. And she would tell these stories that had us captivated, Not folk tales, not fairy tales. She told us real stories from her life And, you know, sometimes after she was done talking, she would say, you know, you kids really ought to be writing these stories down, you know, because one of these days I'm going to kick the bucket and then they're all going to be gone, you know. That was her way of saying, you know, when I die, these stories are going to go with me. And, you know, I think looking back on it now, she was laying a bit of a guilt trip on us. And it didn't work on the other kids. But for whatever reason, it worked on me. And I tried, and in fact, she got me a pad of paper and a pen, and I really tried. I said, okay, let's do this. We're gonna sit down, go ahead, hit me. And she started talking, but she just talked so fast. And I just couldn't keep up with her, really. I just couldn't hack it. And it was a miserable failure. I don't know whatever happened to that old notepad, but whatever was in there, I can tell you it was worthless. It didn't have anything. So the years went by, and I grew up. I went off to college, and I studied cultural anthropology in college, and I studied abroad. I focused on Latin American culture, and I minored in Spanish. And down in South America, I did field research. So I'd go out and I'd interview people. I did one project on the history of a myth, passed down from generation to generation. And I was doing this work in Spanish, in a foreign language, in a foreign country, with all kinds of other, besides the language barrier, other social and cultural barriers that were preventing me from really doing my job. And it was horribly difficult. So, but you know, and once again, I think the work I did at that time was a miserable failure. But it taught me one thing, which was that I had some low-hanging fruit right at home. And it made me realize that there was treasure right there. Here, what was I doing in this foreign country trying to learn about some obscure aspect of this culture when I really didn't have a grasp of my own culture, much less my own family history? Oh, here's my wife and kids. Hi. Here's my 4-year-old son Malcolm and 7-year-old Millie. Hi, sweetie. I'm telling about your great-grandma. All right? So I came back home, and what seemed impossible as a child now seemed so easy compared to what I'd been trying to do in South America. Because I'm back in English, it's so comfortable. And I'm talking to my grandma. She's not looking at me sideways. It's a pleasure for her to tell me these stories. So she was living with my Aunt Mindy in Albany at the time, and so I went out to Albany for a few months, and I equipped with a cassette recorder and a bunch of cassette tapes, because that's what we had back then. And over the course of a few months, we recorded about a dozen hours of stories from all aspects of her life, and even going back to family history, her parents and grandparents. And when I felt that I'd accomplished my mission, I came back home, and I got a shoebox, and I just stored these tapes in my mom's attic and went on with my life. So I went on to grad school. Oh, I'm glad you showed up, Shane, because I'm about to talk about you. I went off to grad school, and around the same time, I met my future wife, the famous Akron photographer, Shane Wynn. And I had been recording audio interviews, and we decided that we should have her come down with me. I was working on a master's project in Ecuador, El Machete Alzado, you know, Voces Campesinas del Ecuador. That means farm worker voices from Ecuador. And I was in charge of the voices, and she was in charge of taking still photos, and we made our first little movie using iMovie with just stills and audio. That's when I caught the filmmaking bug and decided to change directions with my career, and we moved back to Akron. And we bought our first home, and we decided to move here because this is where we wanted to raise our family. We wanted to be near the grandparents and the aunts and uncles. And by the way, one of the aunts is here too. Hi, Jenny. We have lots of family in the area. So we bought our first house, and so I said, well, I gotta go. I had been storing all this stuff in my mom's attic all these years. So I went to my mom's attic to transfer all my stuff over to our new home. And sure enough, there was that shoebox full of cassette tapes. And I remember this day so clearly because it was a hot, muggy summer day. And I walked up into that attic and it was like the heat was locked in there. It was like 110 degrees. Sweat was pouring down. And I dug up those tapes and I just said, oh no, I'm afraid to find out what happened to these tapes. And sure enough, I put them in the cassette recorder and they were just all ruined, completely ruined. All that work, going out for 3 months and interviewing a dozen hours, was all lost. By this time, Bubba's like in her early 80s. She's getting up there in age. And you know, she'd still been living out in Albany with my Aunt Mindy, but she decided that, and we decided that we'd like to have her move back to Akron and move in with us in our new home. And she was from this area. She was from Cleveland, the east side of Cleveland, and moved to Akron in the late 50s. And I think it's natural to want to come back to where you're from at the end of life and just come back home. And so she came to stay with us, and within within a few months, her health declined rapidly, and she was admitted into the hospice program at SUMA. And you know, when they admit you into hospice, it means, at least at that time, it meant you had like 6 months to live or less. And now I'm like, oh shit. I'm sorry, kids. Oh darn it. I gotta get these stories. Oh my God, I've gotta get these stories. And by this time, she was really feeble. Like her health had really declined. And when I say she went into hospice, she didn't go anywhere. She was living in our house with us. But there were nurses and doctors and social workers coming in and out of the house. But she was in the hospice state. And so she was very feeble. She was bedridden. And I had bought my first video camera ever. I graduated to video from audio. And I was at her bedside trying to get these stories before she kicked the bucket. It was really miraculous. It was miraculous, but she rebounded. And I have to say, for my own selfish reasons, I wanted to get those stories, but I think she wanted to tell them. And she came back to life. She actually graduated from hospice for a while. They released her. She said, oh, you're not actually dying. You're out of hospice. And she was able to tell her stories, this time with video, not just audio. Because when she told stories, man, she used her hands and she had these expressions. She was very expressive. You wanted to see that. So video was a great medium for that. And she told those stories in true form. So I recorded about 20 hours, and I distilled it all down to an hour-long documentary. It's called The Bubba Briefs. You can take it out of the library. It's available at the library. And we, on the occasion of her 85th birthday, we had a big party and a big movie premiere. And we invited all her friends and family from all over the country. They all came in to see the premiere of The Bubba Briefs. And I think some people from the audience even saw the library showing of the Bubba Briefs. It was really, it was beautiful. It was a celebration of her life, and she was there to be there to witness it. It wasn't a memorial. It was while she was alive. And it was just a couple months later when StoryCorps came to Akron. And I heard about it, and I had heard the radio broadcasts on NPR of StoryCorps, and I said, oh, Bubba, we gotta go do this. We gotta go downtown. I gotta put you in the car. We gotta do one more interview, Bubba. He says, oh, you've already interviewed me so many times. I'm done with it. I said, no, Bubba, listen. No one's gonna watch this documentary. This is for the family. Yeah, the family will watch it, but nobody's gonna watch this. Besides, look, StoryCorps is going to store these in the Library of Congress. These stories get saved in the Library of Congress. They're not going to put it in their mom's attic, okay? These things will probably be around for hundreds of years. So anyway, I convinced her. She said, okay, let's go. So And I thought, probably I'm biased because I'm her grandson and I think she's just this amazing storyteller, but I really thought that we could make the cut. StoryCorps, they've done I got online and I got the stats on this. They've done 60,000 interviews so far with over 100,000 participants all over the country, all walks of life, all different kinds of people. And, the ones that make it on the radio, maybe 50 a year. So it's really hard to get yours to get on the radio. But I thought for whatever reason we would make the cut, and I said, let's take a shot at it. I know right where to go with this. We've done these interviews for years. We're going to just cut right to the chase. So we went in. It was really funny, They took this Airstream trailer. These big, long, silver, tubular-looking trailers? That's what they use, and they outfit it with a little audio recording studio on the inside. And sure enough, there it is, parked in front of the main library on Main Street. And we had our reservation, and we went up the little metal stairs into this thing, and it was this little thing, They had a table, and they had 2 microphones, and they had the little screen so you don't spit on the microphone. They had 2 of those, one for each of us. It was professional. And we had 40 minutes, and we did our best. And the lady that was in there too, she was this young 20-something. She was a little like me, I thought she could have done Peace Corps. She was a little bit of a hippie, or she could have done AmeriCorps, but she did StoryCorps. That was her volunteer thing that she did. And so anyway, we did this, and we forgot about it, and that was it. A couple years go by, and I get a call from StoryCorps. And they say, hey, we want to put your story on NPR. I was like, what? Would that be okay with you? I was like, yeah, definitely, yes. And they're like, but the only thing is, this other story fell through, and at the last minute, and we need you to fill in some blanks in the story, so could you answer these questions and send us this audio recording real quick, now? I'm like, yeah, dropped everything, recorded this thing, sent it to them. And then I waited, and it was about 3 days later that they had the broadcast. I was ready for the broadcast of StoryCorps, and I had my little thing ready to set up to record the broadcast. And I waited, and then it came on the air, and it wasn't us. It was somebody else. It was this other story. It was this other guy with his granddaughter, And I said, that was a little bit of a heartbreaker. It was we made it to the final cut, but I guess that original story must have come through after all. So I was really disappointed by that, but I was like, okay, whatever, let it go. So then when I get the call last year, they say, we want to put your story in the book. We're making a new book, and we want to include your story. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Okay. Really though? Are you really going to do it? Or because you're going to have me jump through all these hoops and drop everything? And no, this time it really is. We're really going to do it. And they did. And so it's here. And they have this cute little picture of us from the day that we did our recording in the little Airstream trailer. And that was dated September 2nd, 2009. And Bubba passed away a couple years later. She passed away on June 29th, 2011. And I just want to say in closing, Bubba did not believe in an afterlife. She was an atheist. And she just believed that when you died, that was it. You were done. That was your end of your time. And so it was really important for her to tell her story and to leave her story behind. Because in that way, she was immortalized. And in the other way, she was immortalized through her children and her grandchildren. And I can tell you that as one of her grandkids, that she's with me today. She's still with me. I had to decide on what I was going to do for my new film project, and this was a couple years ago now, but I distinctly remember, when you make a decision to do a film, that's an important decision, because I spend multiple years on a single film project. So I take time to think about whether this is what I'm going to do. And I distinctly remember it going through my mind. What would Bubba think of this project? Would she approve of this? Would she want to watch this film? So when it comes down to the real important decisions, that's when she's with me. Thank you.